Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Combot Collective, bringing you everything you want to know about the 2021 Battlebots season. And we're here yet again with another TCC10 countdown for week 9, episode 9 of the Battlebots regular season here. Pretty solid episode, I think one of the best episodes in terms of overall fight quality so far this season. Just look at the main event, especially main event, probably the best fight of the year so far between Scorpius and Yeti. And speaking of that, the winner of that fight, a new entry to the list this week. And of course, we also have the midway major between Blip and Lockjaw. Lockjaw probably putting up the best 0-3 season a robot possibly could ever put up, but that's not going to get you into the TCC10. We got 10 robots that are in the TCC10, and we will not waste too much time here jumping into the list here. But at first, of course, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Please follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, and please join our Discord channel. Please join the TCC10 countdown, and let's jump into it right now. Coming in at number 10 here, I didn't think that by the time we were at the 9th week of the season, we were doing our 9th TCC10 here. I didn't think we were going to be at the point where new robots were going to be entering the list. I thought we would have a pretty solid group of robots cycling in and out of the TCC10 here, but that's not the case, as number 10 right here is Yeti, who, like I said, after C3 Robotics and Team Yeti's fantastic performance here and the main event of this week's episode with Scorpius, it was hyped up and it lived well up to the hype. Huge strikes from both Yeti and Scorpius, and I'm sure whoever won that fight would have ended up taking his number 10 spot, but of course, that did end up being Yeti. Just in terms of Scorpius, of course, the weapon of Yeti was taken out. But, Greg Gibson, fantastic aggressive driving. We saw more of that strategic style from him in this one. And the impacts he did land with that drum spinner while it was still going were big time. Huge impacts, huge strikes. Perfect hit at one point where he hit the side of Scorpius, shot forward, perfectly slotted into the screw slots with the hammer saw Scorpius. That was fantastic. Yeti looking really good here, and will probably end up in the top half of the playoff seeds here. I'm sure they will be a middle ground seed. The loss they did have against Mad Catter was pretty brutal, but sitting pretty happy at number 10 here. I don't think they'll be in the countdown next week, but I guess we'll just have to see. And now moving on to number 9 here, we were talking about how the main event and midway major were some of the most fantastic fights we've seen this year. Well, here's the winner of the midway major, of course, and Blip. Probably the best flipper we have so far this year. Hydra, a bit of a disappointing season. I'm sure we'll still see them in the playoffs in some capacity. But Blip, on the other hand, a bit of not an unknown. It was probably the most hyped up new robot coming into this year. But, a lot of people weren't sure if the brand new, the kinetic flipper mechanism was going to be as good as all the hype was up to. It can flip a still thing pretty good, but can it flip a fighting robot? Yes it can. We saw it throw around Overhaul. We saw it throw around Rusty. So then the question was, well, what about a competent robot? What about a robot like, that we've seen in the semifinals before, a robot like Lockjaw? Well, they took it to Lockjaw as well. Fantastic driving by Aaron Hill. Fantastic pit crew. Blip did smoke a little bit there when it got out pushed by Lockjaw and the Minibot, but they managed to outdrive it. They managed to outplay it there. Lockjaw set ablaze in that fight. The team looked pretty good there. It was a unanimous decision, so 2 knockouts and a unanimous JD for Blip. We're probably looking at the highest rated rookie right here for the playoffs. Blip might stay in this top 10 list. We're gonna have to see, but hey, 3-0 regular season for Blip. What a fantastic run by the rookies here. Rookies, Seems Reasonable Robotics, very, very well known to Battlebots, but rookie robot here in Blip. And now sitting at number 8, a robot that sat at number 8 last week. No real action by this robot, but luckily it didn't fall down any due to inactivity. Sitting at 2-0, we're going to have to see if they end up fighting next week. Of course, at number 8, Team Hypershock with Hypershock, of course. Will Bale's great driving so far this year. It seems like it's been a solid year for the Hypershock team, a positive year for the Hypershock team. The robot's running good even when it takes damage. It looks like the changes that they made are working out. The bot itself, super durable. Even when they lose wheels, the weapon still goes at full bore. This thing hits full power. Very fascinated to see who they end up getting the playoffs. And like I said last week, hopefully Hypershock ends up with the top 10 seed. We want to see that colored Will Bell's hair. And now at number 7, Copperhead here. Of course, 2-1, recent win over Fusion, a robot that looks like we're going to be seeing in the main event for this next upcoming episode against Icewave. Interesting to see how that's going to go. But Copperhead's sitting pretty at 2-0. We don't know if they're going to be getting a third opponent yet either. 7th here so far. Of course, they fell down a little bit due to inactivity, but there's only so much you can do with that. Copperhead sitting at the lucky number 7. Probably going to stay there, probably going to keep going down. Will be interesting to see if they can stay on the list for our next week episode. I imagine they can probably end up somewhere in the 9 or 10 position. We'll just have to see. But Copperhead looks super reliable this year. The drum's hitting at full capacity, full power. Great fights against Fusion and Lockjaw with both complete slugfests. Will be fascinating to see what they do in the playoffs for sure. And capping off the bottom half of the bracket, another Seems Reasonable Robotics entry here in Tantrum, of course, the 2020 semifinalists. Still off a really good run here and there, and then yet in our regular season. Looks like they're undefeated so far. May stay undefeated. 2-0, of course. It's been a little while since we've seen them fight. Their last win was against Lucky. Feels like ages ago, the whole Lucky controversy, Tantrum getting caught up on the wall. Not really a controversy, but definitely a topic of discussion. Of course, Tantrum didn't drive the best in the opening seconds of that fight. Lucky's new driver, of course, has paid dividends for the team, helped them there, but they ended up coming through, getting more used to the robot, and it's a couple of knockouts. It could have been a couple of knockouts, of course, but one JD, one knockout for Tantrum, and they're sitting pretty happy in number 6. We'll probably see him on the list next week as well. Looking good here for Seems Reasonable Robotics. And now at number 5, Pory's going to be happy about this as they go up yet again. Ribeye, another one. In fact, the very first 3-0 team in this season so far. We've had, again, their P1 fight, the very first 3-0 team that was official, I should say. The controversy about the schedule aside, they looked fantastic in the P1 fight. That was a proper opponent there that Ribot showed up and they took care of. Ended up being a knockout with 1 second to go. Great stuff by the Ribot team. I know I said it was a judge's decision last week. That was my mistake. But sitting at number 5, we're probably going to see this robot in a top 8 slot for the playoff seedings. And that sounds about right. I definitely think it's a top 8 robot in the world right now. Maybe even top 5. This bot's got everything you really want in a machine. You know, it's sturdy, fantastic driving, fantastic math, and a program behind it. Modular weaponry. They can do horizontal or vertical. They're all over the place. They move the weapon forward, of course, before the season. That's a big upgrade that has clearly paid dividends for them. Robot sitting at number 5, and who knows where they're going to end up next week. Now entering our top 4 here. An interesting situation going on in number 2, but talking about number 4, Whiplash here, going down a little bit because of what's going on in number 2, but Whiplash and Matty Vasquez, you know, these guys. Matt Vasquez has always been a top-tier driver. In fact, funny enough, we were just talking about it on the Instagram story this week. Matty Vasquez showed up at a Makerspace event in California with a robot I want to say was named Whomper, a pink horizontal spinner. I think it was 1 pound or 3 pound class. He ended up winning the event, I believe. He ended up getting first place in it. I don't know if he even took a loss. So that just shows the versatility of Matty Vasquez and the robots he can win with. But here talking about Whiplash, you know, it's the same old song and dance. We know the stuff he can do with Whiplash. We know the finesse abilities he's pulled off against bots like Bronco, against bots like Valkyrie in the past. Well, he did the same thing here against Bloodsport, of course, this year, and then he did it yet again against Scorpius. Shame we haven't seen the vertical spinner yet. Hopefully we'll see it in the playoffs. I want to see more versatility here from Whiplash. Don't want to see it just become a boxy control bot. Falling down a little bit due to inactivity. We'll see how it finishes overall in the top 10. I can't see it leaving top 5 though, personally. And now moving on to number 3. Still, in my opinion, one of the real surprises of the TCC10 this year. This robot has sat pretty comfortably on the list for most of the year. Outside of robots like Uppercut and SawBlaze, probably the robot that has spent the most time on this list. Of course, talking about Rotator here with the badass undercutter. Put on some of the best fights we've seen so far this year with their crazy wins against Kraken and Black Dragon. Both judges' decisions, so we have yet to see that knockout power. Maybe that's what's keeping it out of number 1 or number 2. But Rotator with a bounce back really this year. Last year it was a 1-2 season. So far they're 2-0. Hopefully we'll see them again. You know, they took a bit of a gamble, took a bit of a bulge jumping forward this year. They said no more double disc, and that upset a bit of the fans. But it's really paid off so far. Rotator, a lot like their old middleweight Blue Flame now. It's such an elite robot, such a robust robot. It's all business, and I'm we're probably going to see this robot make a deep run this year, I think. We're probably going to see it go top 8, maybe even top 4 this year. Rotator has certainly proved itself. This has been a crazy year for Victor Soto and Team Revolution, and probably more to come from Rotator. We'll see where they end up in next week's top 10 if they fight. And of course, now talking about the curious case of SawBlaze here, jumping all the way back to number 2. I guess the bleeding has stopped, the fire has stopped for SawBlaze, who was all the way down at number 5 last week, jumping up to number 2 despite not fighting at all. I guess when news came out about the polycarbonate kill saw thing catching SawBlaze, kind of giving a bit of a unlucky error there, which led to the UDA, people softened up on it. I know I moved it up I'll admit I moved it up a slot this year. I mean this week, just due to how things moved around during this recent episode, but SawBlaze now sitting at number 2, moved up for a couple other people as well, I believe. It just looks really good still. 2-1. We're probably still going to see it in a top 5, top 8 seeding in my opinion. In my opinion, probably the best 2-1 robot we'll have all year this year. It's hard to top that when you have 2 wins against elite capital M robots like Minotaur and Mad Catter, and then your loss is a bit of a fluky loss against Endgame, a robot that you have a win against in the past. They're sitting at a 1-1 now. Hopefully we'll get a rubber match in the future, but in the meantime, SawBlaze, Jameson Go, G3 Robotics, all sitting back at number 2, and a spot there they might very well stay depending on what happens this coming week. They're certainly not going to leave top 3. I'd seriously doubt it. And now, of course, talking about the robot that beat SawBlaze, still our number 1 and likely our number 1 for next week as well. We'll just have to see though. Endgame still at the top. Battlebots champion, of course, coming out of New Zealand. Jack Barker posted a great video of him doing some wild tennis poses on Instagram, and that's about all we can say that's new for Endgame this week. Big fan of that video. I'll probably put it in right here because you can't miss it. It's a great video. He just goes, wow. But I digress. Endgame itself, hitting them big tennis strikes as well. We saw what they were doing against robots like Witch Doctor, against robots like SawBlaze in one clear strike. Even against robots like Hydra, it was a bit of a lackluster fight, but still 2 really good strikes there by Endgame to put away Hydra in that fight. It's a 3-0 season against a bunch of robots that are known for deep playoff runs, known for big wins, known for really solid regular seasons. Endgame just went 3 snaps, 3 knockouts. That's it. They didn't have to go to the judges once. We'll see how long that lasts in the playoffs. I'm sure they're going to get tested by somebody eventually. Very fascinating to see who the 32nd seed will be, who has the unfortunate pleasure of facing Endgame in this tournament. But for now, Endgame, number 1 in TCC10, number 1 in the regular season, likely number 1 in the postseason, number 1 in the Battlebots Championship yet again. We'll just have to wait and see, as it's time to wrap up this video now. So yeah, that'll wrap things up here at the TCC10, of course. Endgame still sitting at number 1. We have a new inclusion, which in my opinion is the real big story this week in Yeti. Putting up a fantastic main event fight against Scorpius. Scorpius, of course, barely missing the TCC10. In fact, a few honorable mentions here. Combot, Uppercut, Jackpot, and Scorpius, of course. All our honorable mentions for this week. All robots that put up fairly good regular season performances. Robots that got big votes in our 4 top 10 voting, of course, but none, of course, making it in just by a few points. In my opinion, Combot, a robot I had on my list, I think it was on our list as well. This robot looks absolutely insane. We saw what they did to Gruff. In fact, Kenny Florian with probably the best commentary line of Battlebots history with the Combot sent Gruff straight to hell. Oh man, that popped me big time. But that's about all. It's going to do it here for the TCC10, of course. Seems Reasonable Robotics still sitting strong. 2 robots on the TCC10. Robot up to number 5, Whiplash number 4, Rotator number 3, SawBlaze after the big loss, jumping from number 5 to number 2 after the big opinion kind of eased up on it. SawBlaze looking good, back in the saddle, of course. And of course, speaking of back in the saddle, number 1 Endgame still. That's gonna do it for us, of course. As always, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, please subscribe, hit the bell, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, join the Discord channel. I am, of course, Sterling Brown, Sterling TXTG, Korea 300th online. You can find me on my Instagram, of course, at Sterling TXTG. That's going to do it for us here. That's another TCC10 in the books. Only 1 more to go before the Battlebots playoffs. We don't know what we're going to do to fill in this show. We do know that more TCC10s will come that will involve the overall heavyweight field, both in terms of UK events, international events. Just ranking overall heavyweights, but that'll be in the future. As always, though, thank you so much for watching this episode, and we will see you again next time.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.